which is looking at unlocking investor confidence, rethinking institutional interfaces, and enabling policies in Nigeria's petroleum sector. I'd now like to invite the moderator, lead partner at May and Ivory. Can we put our hands together for Adebayo Ologe? I thought after the tea break, the applause will be a whole lot stronger. Yes, thank you very much. Next, we have Malam Bashir Sadiq, Executive Director, Corporate Services and Administration at the NMDPRA. A warm round of applause, please. Also joining him for this panel session is none other than the Commission Secretary and Legal Advisor, NUPRC, Olayemi Adeboyejo. A warm round of applause, please. We also have the General Counsel, Nigeria Revenue Service, Dr. Simeon Obidairo. Please put your hands together. Joining us also for this panel is the Director, Legal Services, Ministry of Petroleum Resources, Telemon George Maria Taindezwa. A warm round of applause, please. Please, let's keep the applause going. Can it be stronger and louder? I know it promises to be an amazing session. And finally, we have the Special Assistant to the President on Petroleum. You heard her speak when she gave her opening presentation. Another beautiful round of applause for Ola Adeni. All right, while we sort out the issue, we'll ensure that... Okay, please, could we have another seat? But nonetheless, I'm going to start counting so the clock can start running down as I hand over to our more than able moderator, Adebayo Ologe. Over to you. Please, can we have volume on the mics on stage? Thank you. Can you try that again?
All right. Thank you, MC. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so the topic for this panel has been set at unlocking investor confidence, rethinking institutional interfaces, and enabling policies in Nigeria's petroleum sector. Now, the Special Assistant to the President on Petroleum, thank you once again for that beautiful presentation. Now, I will start with you. Now, in the course of your presentation, you mentioned the number of executive orders and policy interventions by the federal government aimed at improving Nigeria's competitiveness in the petroleum sector. Now, the audience would like to know, from the presidency's perspective, what problems were these reforms intended to solve, and what does government now see as the next frontier in strengthening investor confidence?
Thank you. So we were trying to solve a very practical problem, which is we saw that Nigeria had vast hydrocarbon reserves and resources, but it did not translate into the commensurate investment and production that those resources should translate into. So for example, for gas, we saw that Nigeria had 76% of gas reserves that were undeveloped. So we were trying to ensure that investors made the financial commitments and investment decisions to actually bring those resources out of the ground. And we first of all asked why the investors were not investing. And they mentioned a few issues, for example, poor and unattractive fiscal terms, cost premiums, contracting and approval delays, and each executive order that the president issued was targeted towards addressing each and every one of those concerns. And in terms of the next frontier, what we then did after those executive orders were issued was to codify them as part of the Nigerian Tax Act for long-term stability. And the next step is really watching over implementation to make sure that the policies are actually working as intended. And since they were issued, we've had a few final investment decisions taken on the back of those policies. So we're very excited because it means that they're being implemented and they are working as they should. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Essie. All right, I will move to the legal advisor of the sister agency very quickly. Now, from the presentations made so far, there has been this emphasis on implementation of policies. Now, from the perspective of the upstream regulator, what does regulatory certainty look like in practice?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Let me also thank NMDPRA for inviting me. It's always nice to see when we collaborate with them, despite all that has happened in the past. That always gladdens my heart, and I'm really, really pleased to be here with my colleagues and my friends. You know, for me, I think ultimately, investor confidence is a question of institutional trust. It's just about trust. Because capital will flow to jurisdictions where people believe that the institutions would apply the law in a lawful, consistent, transparent, and predictable manner. That's where capital flows. You know, in petroleum, in the petroleum sector, we like to talk about licenses, leases, approvals, permits. But is that really the sense of certainty? No. I think certainty about regulation, I think good regulation is simply about reducing uncertainty. And as regulators, I think it's key for us to realize that every decision we make, there's no stagnancy. It either increases certainty or it reduces it. When we start from that background, we start to understand what we mean by certainty in regulation. I like that the special advisor to assistant to the president spoke about policy. So policy is great, and I'm glad she mentioned that it was 50% of the job. In fact, I think it's the beginning. I think policy just starts it. So when you have a good policy, you've just started. Policy simply tells investors this is where government wants to go. It is the implementation, is how the institutions implement it, that persuades investors that, you know what, government would actually do what he has said he would do. And it's that persuasion that is key. So for me, when you talk about certainty of regulation, I keep telling people that investors are not, they want things to be cheap. But they do understand that, you know, regulators have a responsibility to enforce the law. We have a responsibility to protect the interest of government and also to generate revenue for government. So they're not really looking for the most favorable outcome. But they do want a regulator that would apply those rules consistently. So investors they want to know who is this regulator? What are his beliefs? How does he apply the law? Is it consistent? What rules are required? What processes would he follow? And most importantly, they want to know that every similar case will be determined the same way. So they don't like surprises. So I think for me, it's all about consistency. And when you are consistent, you're transparent, you're predictable over time, you then build trust. Because ultimately, when you're talking about petroleum, we're talking long-term investments, we're talking several billions of dollars, we're talking a long framework of 20, 30 years. And I think that money can only go where? It's not just about geology, it's not about the terrain, it's not about the fiscal terms. Ultimately, it's about confidence in the institutions that will implement those policies, those rules. And that is what builds certainty.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you, Madam CSLA. Before I leave you on that, I have a follow-up question for you. Now, from the first session we had this morning, there was this conversation around, okay, license holders they are aware of the provisions of the PIA, they are aware of the regulations, and they are aware of the guidelines. But oftentimes when they approach the regulator, they tend to meet something a bit new. So now, speaking as a private legal practitioner, oftentimes I advise that licensed operators should first write the regulators about their intention on any particular project. Now, as a regulator in the upstream, what would you advise? Is it something that you advise they should make a practice?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. As a private practitioner myself, I used to encourage that. And I would then add that let's write for you, let's do it on a no-names basis. Because we're always very careful about whether would the regulator then, would they target our clients, would they victimize our clients? That was always an issue. But I think, like I said, it's predictability. That's what determines it. People ideally shouldn't need to write the regulator to find out how a rule. How can we achieve that? How can we do that? Now, at the Commission, we're in a process of implementing a process whereby we issue regular interpretative guidance. So what we plan to do is to look at the laws. For instance, we start from all the questions we've been asked, and we generate a database of how we interpret those things and how we will treat them. And we plan to build a wide database over a few months. And then we know that we can't cover everything at once, so questions will still come. And as those questions come, then we can then develop another interpretative guidance to handle that scenario. So over time, you can just go to our website, click on these circulars, and then say, okay, this is the scenario, this is how the regulator will handle it. One other thing that causes that is because, believe it or not, we're actually a large organization. So you have different teams handling different things. And sometimes people don't necessarily know what has gone ahead. So how do we plan to address that? How we plan to address that at the Commission is to have a database of decisions, legal opinions, at least from the legal perspective. We will create a database of legal opinions in which people can go and say, you know what, in this scenario, this was the decision, this was the legal reasoning. And we know that if they have that at their fingertips, then it's not every time they come to meet the legal department. Of course, we expect them to come when our issue is critical, but we think they need to know what is the thinking, how are we thinking. And we believe that if we develop those databases, one is internal, one is external. If we develop those two databases over time, we can create more predictability in the system. And that they will then release the issue that the gentleman spoke about when he was speaking at the earlier forum.
Thank you. We are pressed for time. All right, Dr. Nwachukwu, let me take you to the PIA. Now, we are all aware that the PIA created specialized institutions, NMDPRA, NUPRC, with very specific mandates. Now, the minister mentioned it this morning. The essay to the president also mentioned it in her speech about the need for regulators not to work in silos. Now, my question to you is, how do we preserve these statutory mandates while also ensuring that investors experience government as one coordinated system rather than a collection of separate regulators?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ologe. First of all, I think everyone here will see quite clearly that I am not Malam Bashir Sadiq. My ED was, unfortunately, he was called away. Well, fortunately, he was called away on a critical national assignment, and he had to leave rather suddenly. Earlier today, he sent his apologies, and I am a poor substitute, but I will do my best to fill in the gap, that the extremely large gap that his absence has created. So yes, so the PIA has created several institutions. In fact, my colleagues and I were speaking about it a few days ago when we were saying, how many institutions has the PIA created? It's not just the NMDPRA, NUPRC, and even NMPC, as it were. There's a minister, there's MOPI, it's totally new. And for us, I always say that you must never look at the pitfalls of a situation, you must look at the opportunities. And for me, the PIA has created significant opportunities. Now, we can't run away from it. Is there conflict? Has there been conflict within the interpretation of the PIA within the core regulatory and even commercial body, NMPC, NMDPR, and UPRC, yes. Because this is a new way of doing things. People are learning. Interpretations differ. The one thing a lawyer can tell you is that there'll be multiple interpretations to one particular issue. But the critical thing for us is more around that we're not in competition with one another, we're in collaboration. The PIA has mandated a value chain, upstream, midstream, downstream. Within that value chain, you also have different specialized sectors. Certain companies play in one or two of those sectors, and the PIA has also dealt with those issues if we drill down and look deeply into it. For us, it's not about competition, it's about collaboration, in NMDPR in particular, and the value that it brings to Nigerians. So, yes, we do need more and better coordination with our sister agency, the NUPRC. I always maintain that a lot of the issues we have, and I speak freely, it comes from the technical interpretations of the PIA rather than the legal interpretations. If we look at these things, or the literal implications, when we look at these things as is, we see that there's clear segmentation between everyone's rules. And even where there's an overlap, there's still that clear segmentation within that overlap. It's quite clear. So for us as lawyers, I always say that we have a shared responsibility to cut out the noise. We must look at arriving at long-standing solutions that resolve any jurisdictional conflicts. Because at the end of the day, it impacts on our customers, you. You are our customers. Without you, there's nothing for us to regulate. And that is why you are the most important people in the room, I always say. Which is why whenever we are thinking about this forum, we look for industry participation. I know how I badger people to participate. Some people say they don't want to, some people say they can't and everything. I can lie down begging and pleading, please, just come and participate. Say your mind. The world will not end if we talk. So for us, we keep pushing coordination between all the agencies, from the ministry, the minister, who is the first person in the PIA, down to MOPI, the last in the PIA. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Onwachu. Okay, before I move to question on the fiscal regime, let me go to the representative of the ministry. That's the legal advisor of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. That's the parent ministry. Now, we know that the ministry occupies a very unique position within the sector. Now, the audience would like to know, how does the ministry encourage coordination across institutions while ensuring that policy objectives are translated into coherent regulatory outcome?
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, so the answer to this question has been given already, but basically, for the ministry, what it seeks to do is ensure that people investors, the customers, don't experience individual agencies. So the core aim of the ministry is to align all of the agencies, all of the players, the stakeholders, even those who are not directly within the, say, technical operators within the industry, including host communities. So basically, the ministry seeks to align all players. Now, like has been mentioned, it is possible that there might be one or two places where there are overlaps. Again, the ministry's role is to ensure that there is coordination in how even regulation is done, such that you have two major regulators, but you ensure that their regulations complement rather than work at variance, essentially. And also, the ministry strives to ensure that in implementation, where gaps are identified, some of that can also be seen, like I said, in what the essay to the President on Petroleum mentioned, the fact that certain gaps have been identified, presidential orders were issued to help bridge that gap. Essentially, that's a policy intervention from the point of the ministry. So bottom line for the ministry, it is not about how many regulations are issued, but it is more about it is about how those regulations push us all to final investment decisions in key projects, and so that's the main consideration for the ministry.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Now, Dr. Obidairo, I'm coming to you now from the Nigeria Revenue Service. Now, the need for fiscal certainty dominates our conversation here, and even from the presentation of the essay to the President, she made mention of some tax incentives. Now, my question to you is from the perspective of the Nigeria Revenue Service. How do you balance effective revenue administration with the need to maintain a stable and predictable investment climate?
Thank you for the question. I mean, I think from the revenue services perspective, fiscal certainty is one of the core principles that we also espouse. We need to deal with two creative tensions, right? The first one is, how do we provide sufficient incentives for investors while also making sure that the nation receives its fair share, right? And the way we approach this is from a position of enlightened self-interest, which is that if we have better investments in the sector, right, we get to collect more revenues and make available more resources for the state. So that's the first thing. The second tension that we need to play around revolves around the trade-off between maximizing short-term revenue, or do we trade this for long-term investments? So those are the things that we deal with. I mean, again, going back to the theme that seems to be running through this conference, certainty is how we raise revenue. So it's just as important for the revenue service that there's certainty. We can plan around what revenues we're going to receive and how we collect those revenues. As you all know, we recently passed 4 tax laws. And in doing that, certainty was embedded into the process. So the first thing we did was we took 20 different pieces of legislation, right, and brought them down into 3. Now, people don't understand the scale of the reforms that took place in the tax sector. So I always give the example. The largest tax reform that has happened was 1964 in Korea, in South Korea. There were 64 amendments to the tax codes, right? In the new tax laws that we have 480 amendments to the tax code. So what we did was take 20 pieces of legislation, right, reduce it to 3. I think in your industry, I calculate that there were 60-odd pieces of taxes that were being collected. We streamlined those into 4. The second thing that we did was we carried forward the stability terms in the PIA. So we didn't change we didn't change the regime. And I think for investors, particularly in your sector, the biggest risk is that the investor sinks in a lot of capital, right? And government tries to increase its stake in it, or its share of the resources. So what we've also done, and this is the thing that we did, and this speaks to what Yemi was talking about, is we codified an advanced ruling process. So if you're going to do a transaction, right, you make a request to the Nigerian Revenue Service, you describe your transaction, right, and they will tell you how they will treat that transaction. and that's binding on the service. So, I mean, I think in terms of trying to create certainty in the industry, I think those are the major things that we've done specifically that relate to the oil industry.
Thank you very much. Okay. Before I go to the members of the audience, to my panelists, I'll give you 1 minute each. Now, what should we look at as our next priority if Nigeria is to become Africa's preferred petroleum investment destination? The SA, the president.
So I think the next priority is domesticating more of our resources, both oil and gas, for energy security, economic growth, and economic diversification. So what does that mean? It means more gas available for the power sector, more gas available to industrialize, more gas available for cooking and for transportation. So the next focus is not only exporting our vast resources, but also making sure that they're used to actually ensure wealth and prosperity in the country.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bidaro.
I think one thing I hear among operators is that you ask one question and you get 3 different answers, right? I think there's a confusion that this is around the mandates. I don't think the problem is around the mandates, right? I think the problem revolves around the data architecture, right, and how decisions are made. So I think if there's one thing that we should focus on is that we need to work off the same data set, right? So that as an operator, you get certainty in the responses that you get from the regulators.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Otalu.
I think simply, from our perspective, it's more about a priority should be accelerating project delivery. So it's more about execution, faster approvals, predictable timelines. I think the key thing for us is that we should be able to convert opportunities into producing assets faster. So I think the focus is that we have crossed the gap of policy. What we need to do is cross the threshold of better execution.
Okay, thank you. Madam CSLA.
Okay, I think I agree with my colleagues. I just would like to add that we also need to mature institutionally. So I think institutional maturity is a key priority. And by that, I mean that as regulators, we need to respect each other's mandates and capabilities. We need to engage more, collaborate more, solve problems holistically. And as the special assistant to the president said, we need to understand that, the country matters more than our institution does. So our mindset should be country-focused and not institutional-focused. I also echo my brother's view that data would also be key. The ability to use the same data set, the ability to make sure that our data has integrity, is well gathered together, and of course to continue to build ourselves so that we are excellent in our administration. I think those are the next frontiers for us as a country.
Thank you. Dr. Wachuku, very quickly.
Yes, thank you. I think the panel has spoken quite eloquently on this particular subject. For me, it's a consistency in regulatory approach processes. I think that just covers it. The critical thing an investor wants, an investor is anyone who brings in 1 naira into this country, into this sector. It is it's 1 naira that they may not recover for the next 10 years. So the critical thing is regulatory certainty, consistent in regulatory approach for across the entire sector. If I have an incentive that made me go, I don't want to see that incentive being taken away or by a new government or a new government policy or whatever. I want to build my investment around that. And for us, we continue to, in the midstream and downstream space, the resource comes from the upstream. but it can only be utilized in the midstream and downstream. It's a figment of everyone's imagination in that upstream. So for us, the critical thing is how do we constantly seek both government and private sector investment and drive to ensure that the resource is converted to the good of the Nigerian people. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Though I still have more questions for my panelists, but let's open the floor at this time to allow members of the audience to ask questions.
Please, do we have any questions? If we do, please let's just signify.
I imagine you want to take one from each side of the hall. We have to my right, the middle, and to my left. Any question?
Please signify by raising your hand. We'll say your
panelists.
name, your role, your company, and of course, your question and who it's directed at. So, do we have any questions? Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to maybe utilize?
Yes, okay, very well. Thank you. Okay.
We won't take any more questions. We'll just finish the panel with maybe one or two questions and then.
All right. Okay. So the essay to the president, I want to come back to you. In terms of policy, are we expecting any new policy anytime soon, or executive order, or anything, any policy change?
So as was announced a few months ago by the president himself, we are working on introducing additional incentives to enable the next set of large capital intensive deep offshore projects. And we're also very focused on the implementation of existing policies that have been introduced to make sure that FID can on the back of those policies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Bidaro, you wanted to say something in that regard?
No, I mean, I think in terms of, areas within the fiscal space to watch. I think paying attention to what's happening with the rules around abandonment and decommissioning. We are currently drafting a set of regulations on how how the use or how the funds that are domiciled in Nigeria will be used. We are going through that process. We are speaking to our sister agencies, CBN, NMDPRA, and NUPRC, and I think that's certainly an area space to watch for.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I want to also ask the panelists. I will start from Dr. Nwachukwu. Now, moving away from here, I want to know, or members of the audience would like to know, what message would you like investors to leave this conference or this gathering with in terms of the Nigeria's petroleum sector or the midstream, downstream sector?
Okay. I will speak to the lawyers here to take back to they are investors, but I know that most of us here report to.
Well, they are representing the investors.
They are representatives of
the
investors.
legal minds.
So I will say that, look, for us at the NMDPRA, we urgently prioritize ways of making things easier for everyone. When the PIA came into force in 2021, it was interesting. We came from a regime where we had maybe, 10 regulations in the industry. All of a sudden, we're now seeing 20, 30 regulations from NUPRC, 20, 30 regulations from the NMDPRA. And these are mandated by the PIA. So at some point in time, for us, we began a process of consolidation, review consolidation, to reduce these things. Because we said, look, in fact, I had a meeting with a gentleman who played in the upstream, midstream, and downstream. And he told me that, Charles, I need my legal department before was, 5 people. Now I need 40 lawyers just interpreting this thing. It's not making sense. It's cost. So we began a process of streamlining our regulations, and we're doing that across the entire value chain. Over the next few months, you will see certain initiatives coming out. We have reduced 16 regulations into one, our operations regulations 2025, our safety and environment-based regulations, we're just concluding the process of that. Our fiscal-based regulations, we're also reducing that as well. At the end of the day, you will see a lot less documentation from us and a lot more action. We're implementing to ensure that an investor coming into the country, as the legal advisor said, because I want to discuss this, we spoke about assignment of interest, all right? Someone wants to come in and buy or take a stake. He doesn't have all the information around that particular company or facility or asset. And they come to us, they reach out for us. Internally, we even struggle with a fragmented approach to basically assembling this information. So one of our key initiatives over the next few months is that the PIA mandates that we maintain a register of license and permits. Every company that engages with the NMDPIA will receive a unique number, one number, across the entire value chain. That number will then be utilized in aggregating all information in relation to that company. So for example, if a law firm registers with us under our OGISP process, it's given that unique number. A filling station, that unique number, or a company that owns a filling station, that unique number. Every business that company does, every license issued, every penalty, every infraction, everything will come under that unique number. So you just go there, you pay your fee, or whatever it is, you access that information. It gives you the entire history of that company. We believe that this will drive investment certainty. It will reduce the due diligence process for lawyers so that you don't write to us. I see a lot of these things. You write to us saying, oh, you want to find out about this company. Internally, we start scrambling to locate this information as well. So these are some of the things that we are pushing forward. You also see more reliance on or more implementation of the actual names of the licenses. So you'll be seeing, rather than if you're in the downstream sector, you'll be seeing, you have what you call your retail outlet license, you have your petroleum product chemical license. You will now start seeing, sorry for my going to Yoruba. So you will now start seeing, you will see the proper names as set out in the PIA for those licenses as well. So those are part of the programs that we'll be rolling out over the next few months to drive regulatory certainty and investment opportunities. So please take that back to your people. And if, as we're an open door at any point in time, you know that those who know me know that you can reach out to us at any point in time. You can have a conversation with us. There's no topic too big. There's no topics too small. We're always ready to engage. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Madam CSLA, do you want to also say something about that? What do you want our colleagues to leave here with?
Thank you. First, I wanted to say that I'm shocked that nobody asked us questions. Considering they said they're always writing, I would have thought they would take this
Exactly. I think we need to have a question.
where I have to squirm and answer you. But I'm not inviting. The time has passed. I'm just noting.
But I do think we should have a question.
If there's one thing I would like to leave behind, I would just like to tell the investors here, and I also mean the lawyers, that you need to forget the noise and look at the travel direction. Nigeria has implemented one of the largest reforms in the petroleum sector recently, also in the tax sector. So forget the past and look at the journey, look at where we're going. Our institutions, they're growing. Our regulatory environment is maturing. We have currently the most collaborative climate that you can find. So Nigeria is ready for investment, and I would just like to invite them on this journey with us. The institutions are trying to get your trust. We just want you to trust us. When we say ask questions, please ask questions. We're ready for you. We're waiting for you. And we just want you to go with us on this journey. I know that Nigeria is ready and is one of the safest environments to invest in right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll take that literally. We have a question here.
My name is Adedayo Ajibade. I work with International Energy Services Limited. And my question is directed to the SA, to the president, and is, what are the incentives available to local investors, especially, let's say, like gas? What are those things that the government is looking at to provide those local investors, considering the financial impact or cost to those projects, like tax waivers or grants, in order to also encourage them?
Thank you. We have a second question, so we'll take that and then have a chance to respond. Oh, we have a question here too. Wow.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Onyinye Chukwu. I work with Africa Terminals. We're playing the downstream sector, terminal operations. My question is to Dr. Nwachukwu. Recently, I had a conversation with somebody. This is specifically, around the topic of investor confidence. I was having a conversation with somebody who categorically said to me verbatim that terminaling operations is dying. And of course, whenever we're at these forums, we always, mention our big brother, who is, giving us a value giving us a run for our money within the sector. So my question really is, what measures will the authority, or is the authority taking to promote equitable competition and regulatory clarity needed to build investor confidence, specifically within downstream terminaling operations?
All right. Okay, thank you. I think we should start with the essay. There was a question directly to you on incentives generally.
Yeah.
To domestic players.
Yes, thank you for your question. So you asked about tax incentives for gas specifically. So there are incentives across the upstream, midstream, and downstream sectors. So for the upstream sector, there are production tax credits available for the production of non-associated gas, so very dry gas. For the midstream sector, there is a 25% gas utilization investment allowance for midstream gas projects. And for the downstream sector, for CNG and LPG and mini LNG specifically, there is a value-added tax and customs duty waiver on the importation of LPG as a product, and LPG equipment and infrastructure, CNG equipment and infrastructure, and domestic LNG equipment and infrastructure. And these incentives apply across board to both international and domestic players. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Essie. Dr. Nwachukwu, the question on healthy competition between big players and small players in the industry.
Okay. So I'm someone that likes to go straight to the point. As I said, the world will not end if we speak. So, Madam, I'm assuming you're speaking about Dangote. Huh? All right. The world will not end if we have a conversation. Look, the more we talk, the better we understand our issues and go forward. That's my view of it. As a caveat here, these are my personal opinions, and let me put that in context now because of certain other things that are ongoing, as everyone in this industry is aware of. Now, the world is changing. The world is changing, and the critical thing, and when I say the world, I mean our industry. Let me drill down. And the critical thing is one of adaptability. A few years ago, we could not stream on YouTube. We could not do some of the things we're doing. This has been a fundamental shift in terms of how services are consumed globally. AI is what is in front of us now. A lot of us, it has improved our work. It also has the potential of killing off a lot of entry-level jobs. As companies, we must begin to adapt to what is in front of us. The NMDPRA understands that at some point in time, there may be market dominance. And as I've always said, the PIA and the FCCPC Act, I think my FCC brethren, they are here, Abi. Say, hey, FCCPC. There we're going, right. So, it doesn't, the FCCPC Act doesn't, it's not against dominance, it's against abuse of dominance. And the PIA is so smart that it recognizes that this is a thing. What is the dominance threshold set by the FCCPC? I think it's 40%, right? Now, the PIA looks at this and then now says, at a point, NMDPRA can come in and do certain things. But those are certain things, and I think it's relating to price and some other things. We, as businesses, we must adapt, we must offer more. That is the truth. But the NMDPRA stands ready at every point in time to assist that transition if it must take place and support that desire to adapt. That is what I would say in relation to that question, really. We are constantly looking for ways to build investor confidence. We undertook a review of our fees regime to make entry point and sustainability going forward a lot easier. We've gone downwards. We continue to look at ways of doing that. We continue to urge, which is why this panel was very important to me. We urge collaboration with everyone, NRS, the SA Energy's incentives. We're having a conversation around incentives a few days ago that, look, you need to incentivize these companies. We need to find a way around it. We are doing our part. We reduced our fees significantly. I think you attest to that. But across the entire value chain, there's pressure from the state governments, there's pressure from the local governments, there's pressure from other regulatory bodies. So this is where NRS comes in. The idea is that there should be a one-stop in terms of fees charged so that everyone, the companies are not under such significant pressure. But as I said, we must adapt to the world that we have found ourselves in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Nwachukwu.
Hello, Franklin Ofwa from PNG Gas. My question is to the SA on petroleum. And my question is a function of responses from host communities in the last couple of months in the course of interface for the host communities trust development fund. There appears to be issues of regulatory overlaps between the PIA and the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Country Development Act. Why am I saying so? When you look at the fund metrics that breaks the fund distribution into 75%, 20, and 5%, the communities think that they are shortchanged in contrast to what they get under the Local Content Act. So my question is, what is government doing to try to bring a semblance of balance between both laws, having in mind that the PIA itself was meant to be overarching over all petroleum laws? Thank you.
All right, that's it.
Thank you very much for your question. And I'm happy I have both NUPRC and NMDPRA on the panel with me so they can also speak to it. But we've actually set up a joint team between our office and both NUPRC and NMDPRA to address these issues of regulatory overlap Another issue that has also been raised is also on decommissioning and abandonment across the upstream and the midstream sectors, and we're working on streamlining and synthesizing between both NUPRC and NMDPRA. Joint guidelines would be issued shortly to address these issues. But I also yield the floor to both CSLA and Mr. Charles to also chime in.
Okay.
I think you've answered the question, though. I think generally, overlap is something that would happen when you have different organizations and different mandates. I think the key is the way the regulator and when necessary, the policymakers respond to it. And in this instance, they have responded very positively. Policies have come out, frameworks have come out, we're working on the guidelines. But we like the fact that you continue to challenge and encourage us. It makes us work harder. I'll leave it to Charles now to touch on the kind of gather, but we're working on them. Guidelines are in place. The framework is there. Very soon guidelines will be issued, and they'll provide a lot of clarity to what you're asking.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I think your question is really, your question falls to the, which is a better one? Is it the benefits under the host community development, under the PIA provisions of host community, or under the NCDMB Act? This thing. So let's understand, because I don't think your question was answered. That's why I want to. Yes, so I want us to speak to it.
For clarity, the issue of the community's agitation for more take is a derivative of the regulatory overlap. What am I saying? If the PIA was meant to be an overarching legislation, why is the Local Content Act still in existence and performing similar roles that the communities are complaining about? Prior to the PIA, there were global MOUs, and the communities thought they had much more money than what they are getting under the PIA. That's the point I'm making.
Yes, so because I was a bit confused when you said, when you were talking about the NCDMB and this thing. So let's situate it. What you're speaking to is that it seemed to be better under the global MOUs vis-a-vis the PIA. That's what you're saying, right? Yes. Yeah. So I have to say that I don't really understand. I've not really looked at the provisions of the NCDMB Act, if any such, on host community issues, but I understand the global MOU framework. I'm from the Niger Delta, so I've benefited from that framework. Once in a while, they've given me 1 naira or 5 naira as my share of whatever has been this thing. I understand that the companies, it's more beneficial to the companies. The PIA framework in its own way, it takes off a lot of responsibility and pushes it on the companies. And rather the global MOU framework, which give a lot more work to the companies. My understanding is that you must strike a balance in this thing. You exist in these communities. I give you an example. So my community, I always like to give this. My community has enjoyed relatively stable power under the then IOC that managed it for decades, ever since I was born, for decades before then. And then the new operator comes on board and says that, look, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, this 3%, your power forms part of that. Your power now forms part of that. I looked at that, this is not a common sense approach. Because it never formed part of the global MOU. That power, it was part of the global MOU, but it did not stop other projects from happening. So, I'm sorry, but if you're operating in an environment and you have been giving them X amount I think NLNG is very good at this in particular. I don't know if anyone from NLNG is in the room here. Have a word with them about how they do it. They're very good at this. If you've been giving somebody something, it's advisable that at least you maintain that threshold, that level. I think advisable, I think it's fair. I'm being practical. I'm not speaking to the law. I'm being very, very practical. That if that 3% has taken away something, it's advisable that you meet it up. Thank you.
Let me just add something. I understand your question better now. There's no overlap over the Local Content Act. Hello, sir. There's no overlap under the Local Content Act and the PIA. Local Content Act talks about local content, award of contracts. It doesn't talk about that host community. Let me finish. Sir, sorry, that was done under the global MOU. So now the global MOUs, you have to recognize that now we have a lot of small players in the upstream sector. A lot of small players. I very much doubt that if the PID mandates them to give you that 3%, I'm not sure they're like Sherlock that will give you that percentage on global MOUs. So the beauty is that now the law makes it mandatory. So it's no longer discretionary on a company deciding and negotiating with you. So more people, this is spreading around. When you look at the effect, you will see that on a cumulative and aggregate basis, when it contains all communities are better off now because it's the mandate of the law as opposed to bilateral. There are more indigenous in Nigeria now than those IOCs that had global MOUs. So it's better for the generality of Nigerians that this law exists.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so let's catch up afterwards. Obviously, you know, please immediately after this, let's understand the situation, the issues better. Thank you.
Yes, as Dr. Charles will say, the war would not end because we're having a conversation. So the conversation continues. Please, can we give our amazing panelists and moderator a resounding round of applause for that rather thought-provoking conversation. Please, can you rise? We'd like you to have a group picture, and we're also going to present you with a gift on behalf of the organizers. It's a pleasure to invite to present the gift the Director, Public Affairs Department, NMDPRA, George Ene Ita. A warm round of applause for him. Please, let's put our hands together. Please remain on stage. He is not alone. He is also accompanied by the Regulatory Affairs Lead, Atom Energy Law Advisory, Mr. Fortune Toma. They'll be presenting a gift on behalf of the NMDPRA. We still have one more panel before we break for lunch and then return later tonight for the cocktail. Please, can we ask the questions when the time is given? Because we had to actually stop taking questions because 2 or 3 more questions came up, but our time had actually gone. So our next and our final panel for today looks at From Policy to Project, exploring legal and commercial entry points for investment in Nigeria's midstream and downstream petroleum value chain. We'll start again with an opening presentation, which will last for 10 minutes. And then the conversation proper will be for 30 minutes, and then 10 minutes for questions and answers. I know the day is fast spent, but please, we love to have conversation, healthy dialogue, and ensure that we're leaving here with a clearer picture so we're better at implementing and not just following the law. Remember, our theme for today and this year's edition is Beyond Compliance, Driving Regulatory Certainty and Investment Confidence in Nigeria's Petroleum Sector.